We will dive into everything for Georgia Southern men's basketball a little bit later on, but as promised, we catch up with the women's basketball voice for Arkansas State, Cade Carlton, in his first season. Not necessarily first season out in Jonesboro, but first season covering Arkansas State. He's worked with EAB for a number of years and a graduate of Arkansas State, but we catch up with Cade right now. So we continue this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation. We got to welcome in the voice of Arkansas State women's basketball, Cade Carlton. Cade, appreciate you joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Your first year with Arkansas State as the full-time voice for women's basketball. Give us a little bit of background about you, as you're the new guy in the Sun Belt Conference.
Yeah, I graduated from A-State, so I'd been in school for, I guess, the last 5 years or so at A-State, and so I was doing play-by-play for a high school in Jonesboro, so I was doing their football and basketball, so still doing a little high school play-by-play, still doing football and the occasional basketball game. We have a big Christmas tournament going on right now, but first year doing A-State, so excited to get conference play underway in a couple of days.
You've gone through non-conference play with this team, 7-6 on the year. Talk about what the impact Matt Daniel has had in his third year as head coach for you guys. What's the impact that he's had the last few years?
Well, we have an interim head coach right now. Matt Daniel resigned before the Mississippi Valley State game, which I guess was 3 games ago. So, we played Valley on a Tuesday night. He resigned, about 20 hours before that Monday night. So Destiny Rogers has been the interim since then. And, got a couple of pretty convincing wins over Hendricks, which is the D3 school, and then Mississippi Valley State, just, kind of like you expected, but then went on the road on Tuesday, or I guess Wednesday night before Christmas, and got a 3-point win at SIU Edwardsville. And so that was, that was a really good, it's never easy to win on the road. And then to get to play a team that is, I would consider a like opponent from what you're going to see in the Sun Belt Conference, and to be able to go, 4 hours on the road and get the win was big. So, they kind of went on a stretch there where they lost 3-4 games in a row. And, Matt Daniel resigned, and the Destiny Rogers, I don't know what the deal is. If it's looked like a completely different team in a good way. That's not a shot at anyone. I think Coach Daniel did a really, really good job, and really like working with him. But it's been a fun 3-game stretch these last 3 games for sure.
You look at this Arkansas State team, and you've got a number of different players scoring more than double figures. What's really been the key for this team as a whole?
Yeah, you got, you were out without Jibber Washington, who was the lone, preseason Sun Belt selection for the first, 2-3 weeks of the season. And, she's come back and, given this team just a major impact, playing off the bench. And then she got her first start at SIU Edwardsville and wound up going for 13, which was a new season high for her. You've got Trinity Jackson that's played really, really well inside, who really came on at the end of last year. And then Morgan Wallace. And so those are your 3 key returners. But, then you have Lauren Pendleton, who was named, to one of the freshman watch lists by 538 last week, who has been phenomenal. And she's averaging almost 11 points on the season. Then you have a freshman guard in Jade Upshaw, who's come on and, given the team 5 or 6 games in double digits. So it's kind of been a good blend of newcomers and, players off last year's team. And then that didn't even mention Kia Patton, who transferred in from Auburn and is averaging 13 points per game. So it's really been a good mix of players that have been here, and then, some newcomers as well.
Being around this team, it was a team last year that struggled 9-12, 4-10 in conference play. I know you weren't there last year, but being around the team, what's been the biggest change trying to get Arkansas State back to what everybody in Jonesboro expects it to be?
They've gotten to a point where, the last 3 games, they've shot the ball extremely well. And that was kind of the ingredient to success early on in the season, because the first 4 or 5 games, the expectations were sky high, and then they kind of hit a wall and lost 4 straight. But, they go on the road and they put up 88 against Oklahoma. They hang with Arkansas for 3 quarters, and they've just been able to score the basketball extremely effectively. And they've kind of gotten back to that where, I think they were third most field goal makes in a game in program history against Mississippi Valley State. They made 28 field goals the other night against SIU Edwardsville. So they've kind of gotten back to that, where they're shooting the ball well and moving the ball well offensively. They went back-to-back games with 20 assists in the Hendricks and Mississippi Valley State game, then had 15 against Edwardsville. So been able to move the ball extremely well. The big thing that's a difference from last year is, and this has been in most games, they got out-rebounded by 10 against Edwardsville, but most games this year, they have either won or, competed in the rebounding battle. It's not been this huge margin that they're getting out rebounded by. So that's been a definite change in the positive from what we kind of saw last year.
You talked about Kia Patton, the transfer in from Auburn. She's had a couple of different stops along her college career, but 12 points, almost 4 rebounds a game. What is it about her game and shooting the ball really well, 52% from the floor? What is it about her game that has really brought another dimension to this team?
Yeah, I mean, she has 9 games in double digits on the year, which is, just been huge to just have, you feel like you have a pretty good mix of, 4 to 5 different scorers who, at least 3 of them on a given night can get you into double digits. And we've seen multiple games this year where that number has been around 4 or 5, which, ideally is what you want in that. But she's just been really good off the ball. She's come on and played on the ball a little, but just been really good off the ball. And I don't necessarily know that they're running, a lot of sets to get her these open looks. I mean, she's just able to kind of create her shot. And, there hasn't been really one game where you kind of point and think, oh, she didn't have a really good game shooting the basketball. I mean, she's just an effective scorer and really can score it from all over. So, I mean, she's been a huge boost to this lineup this year.
Talk about the dynamic of this team, and on paper it's a little bit interesting. You've got 4 or 5 players that are averaging about 25 plus minutes a game, but it's also a team that'll go 10, 11 deep on any given night. What's the dynamic as far as what minutes look like for this team?
I think it kind of varies game to game. They wound up playing 10 at Edwardsville, but they were also without Maylin Wilkerson, who was dealing with the stomach bug, a flu bug, something. She couldn't go. So, I mean, yeah, it's kind of been in that range of 9, 10, 11, night in, night out. Now, that's 9, 10, and 11 with, a couple of players probably playing less than 5 minutes. So, I mean, when you really look at it in terms of the minutes, you probably have about a 9-person rotation when Maylin Wilkerson is healthy. 9 players probably averaging, 12, 13, 14 minutes per game, which is what it's looked like a lot this year. Now, it is nice to have, a Talia Roldan who gave you a double-double a couple of games ago as, kind of a third post player off the bench. And so I think that's a difference, too, from last year is, through the transfer portal, through, high school recruiting, through different kids deciding to come back. I mean, you built up a little bit of depth, which has been nice to have, but you can have that 9, 10-person rotation.
Take us through this non-conference schedule for your guys. Again, 7-6 on the season, but you mentioned going to Norman to play Oklahoma, got Arkansas at home, had on the road to Missouri and Southeast Missouri State, then an Oral Roberts tournament, and then a long trip out to Utah State. What does this non-conference slate really look like for Arkansas State?
It's been interesting because went on the road with Oklahoma and in the fourth quarter of play and had cut it down to single digits. I think it was a 2-possession game at one point in the fourth quarter of play, and then they wound up winning by 12 or 13 or whatever they won by. So that was a good test early on, and then Arkansas is a weird dynamic where it's not like most states where Georgia State or Georgia Southern may play Georgia every now and then, maybe not all the time, but at least the game has been played. I mean, that's a series that just hasn't been played. I mean, Arkansas has had this policy in place where they don't schedule A-State in the regular season. So that was the first regular season meeting between A-State and Arkansas in almost 40 years. So it was a big deal in Jonesboro. It obviously came out of the losing end, but that was interesting. And then Went on the road and played kind of a weird stretch in Tulsa where you played 2 games in about a 23-hour span and lost both of those. And then, the Utah State trip, I'd never seen anything like it in a basketball game. Utah State played with 5 players in the second half. Their entire bench got ejected at the half. There was a fight for the basketball, and then both players kind of came up heated, and the entire Utah State bench went on the floor, so they got ejected for the entire second half and wound up losing with a 3 with like 10 seconds to go. So I mean that was deflating, but. That was the last game before Destiny Rogers took over as the interim, and then we've had these last 3 games, which has been a pretty fun run.
You start Sun Belt Conference play this week, and the start of conference play this year is a little bit different. You're making the trip to Statesboro for the game on Thursday to take on Georgia Southern, but then you go back home for New Year's Day to take on Georgia State inside First National Bank Arena. It's a little bit different of a opener of Sun Belt Conference play, but I got to imagine this team's all kinds of fired up for SBC play.
Yeah, no doubt. And, like I said, I think the SIU Edwardsville game was kind of a primer for Sun Belt play, because you're going on the road, you're playing a team, that again is probably going to be, on the same level as some of the teams in your league. And so, I think that was a really good win. They've been dealing with a flu bug or a stomach bug or, whatever, something's going around. And I think they finally kind of got through that. Yeah, I mean, they're healthy. They're playing really good basketball. And I think, really excited to see what that looks like in Sun Belt Conference play for sure. Now, I wish we played at Georgia State and then played Georgia Southern at home and didn't have to make the 9.5-hour trip and then turn it back around and come home 2 days later. But it is what it is.
Well, you were telling me that you guys are sleeper busing it down to Statesboro?
Yeah, 6 a.m. departure time on Wednesday. And
you seem really excited about it.
Yeah, play 2 o'clock, I guess, y'all's time on Thursday. So,
what are you excited about most of getting into Sun Belt Conference play from you personally with your first year in the league?
Well, I mean, I've been to, just traveling with football and all through that. When I was in school, I've been to some of the places in the league, but I've never been to Statesboro, so that'll be a first for me. I've never seen outside of Little Rock. I've never seen any of the basketball arenas, so all of those will be, first time experiences. So that'll be cool. And then, there's a couple of towns I've been in, but for the most part, I haven't really traveled within the Sun Belt. So I'm kind of excited to see what every place has to offer. So that'll be fun.
Cade, really appreciate the time. Looking forward to seeing you when you get down here to Statesboro.
All right, sounds good. We'll see you in a few days.
Once again, that's Cade Carlton, the voice of women's basketball for Arkansas State. And we continue with this week's edition of Inside Eagle Nation coming up next. New blood in the Sun Belt Conference.
Was that a commercial break we just had?
Slightly.
162 episodes in, we got our first commercial break.
Oh, we've had some commercial breaks before now.
We've had a chance to meet Kate a couple of times. We've been on Kara Ritchie's show. We've been on with Bobo out at NEA.
I still say Kara needs to come down 1 week or one game.
Well, they finally got her to New Orleans for Media Day, so I feel like that's a building block approach.
Well, good.
Well, you were there.
I was. That's right.
We were all there at Media Day this year because we had a Media Day.
But when Kara got there, she just got cornered by Jay Walker. So
you sound surprised.
Well, yeah, that's true.
But I'm glad to see Cade's getting on play-by-play and getting you some fresh fish.
I know. On the women's side, it's very strange. There's not a whole lot of continuity with... And it's very strange because all of our friends are on the men's basketball side, and so I don't get to see any of our buddies, except for Mike Hammett at ULM. That's about all I got.
Well, the first thing I get asked when we get somewhere is, where's Colin?
He's at home.
Well, he's not here, so he's got to be in Statesboro.
Had to leave me at home.
Or we're in Statesboro. Where is he? Oh, it's the Mirror, so
he's somewhere, not here.
Wherever we're not, that's where he is.
Exactly. But again, it's an Arkansas State team coming in on Thursday, a little bit earlier of a tip-off, a 2 p.m. tip-off inside Hanner Fieldhouse to get things going on Thursday.
How did you manage that?
My guess is because Arkansas State is sleeper busing it, and so they've got to get back to Jones Boogie before...
See, that does make sense.
Yeah, that I get. And especially because a lot of teams are having to travel this weekend. I imagine there's a lot of places. Louisiana won't do it, but I imagine there's a lot of places that have earlier tip times just because of the travel. Because I think everybody around the league has to go somewhere, and it's not as drastic as having to go from Statesboro to back to Jonesboro, or in Georgia Southern's case, Statesboro to Little Rock.
Yeah, the hook this year with the split is that New Year's Eve is the quote-unquote in-between day or the travel day, the buffer day. So most of the tips on January 1st should be relatively earlier. There are still a couple schools in the league that will go 7 o'clock on Saturday nights, but I think that most people have gotten the message that, hey, if we're going to go Thursday night, let's do Saturday before 4. That way we can help, whether it's our personal travel or whether it's your travel, just to help expedite things.
So a 2 o'clock tip-off for Georgia Southern and Arkansas State inside Hanner Fieldhouse. Then women's basketball will look ahead to a Little Rock team. 2 p.m. the tip-off from the Jack Stevens Center, and potentially, probably, the last time Georgia Southern women's basketball, and you guys will hit it on Thursday.
That's right.
Last time you go to the Jack Stevens Center.
And I really like the arena. It's got that big arena type feel. It doesn't have near the number of seats that a First National Bank Arena does in Jonesboro or a Cajun Dome does in Lafayette, but I really like the arena. It's one of those places where we sit second level, and we're almost on one of the baselines behind a basket, but we'll have the same thing in Texas, but we don't go to Texas this year. Well, I don't go to Texas this year. You go to Texas this year.
I don't go to Texas this year. Neither of us go to Texas.
You don't go to Texas this year, so it's not the true mirror schedule.
No, women's basketball could be playing the Alabamas and you're playing the Carolinas.
Okay.
There's no rhyme or reason, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, but again, nobody asked me.
So neither of us are going to Texas.
No, we have Texas at home third week of this the conference slate.
So the following weekend, when the Eagles begin the home portion of conference play, it's Texas State on Thursday and then UT Arlington on Saturday, but we don't return that trip as part of the 18-game schedule this year. But getting back to Little Rock, it's only been within the last few weeks that they announced their intentions to join the OVC next July, and they're terming this year as their last trip around the sun, which is kind of cool when you think about it. But they've been in the league for 30 years. They've gone to 4 NITs. They've gone to an NCAA tournament where Coach Berg was an assistant on that 2015 when Chris Beard spent his only year in the conference. They went 30-5, beat Purdue in the 12-5 matchup, in which here's one that'll knock you off.
Uh-oh.
Grant Weatherford was a redshirt freshman on that Purdue team in 2015.
Good night.
That's how far back.
Not even a true freshman, a redshirt freshman.
Well, okay, he redshirted that year.
I got you.
But
is his redshirt year.
Correct.
Gotcha.
And current Mercer head coach Greg Gary was an assistant for Matt Painter at that time. And I remember watching that game live. Little Rock had to come back from a big deficit in the final 5 minutes. They ended up winning the game in an extra session. But, yeah, Jack Stevens Center is one of my favorite venues to go to, different perspective because we're higher up. And it made me think about something because earlier this year we played Arkansas, football-wise, out in Fayetteville, first trip for Georgia Southern to Fayetteville. Jack Stevens had a suite.
That's right.
And we were going up the elevator. This was maybe a couple of carols down from the press box where Jack Stevens, that's got to be the same one.
I can't imagine there's too many Jack Stevens in
the state of Arkansas.
Yeah, right.
But looking forward to catching up with Ray. Maybe the final time we'll get a chance to see him. He's been involved with Little Rock basketball for close to 40 years. The last time that we were out in Little Rock, January of 2020, that weekend he was getting inducted into the Little Rock Athletics Hall of Fame.
He brought you in to get some food.
Yeah, this was an area of the Jack Stevens Center that I have never seen before, may not get a chance to see again, but Ray's been a big figure out in the state of Arkansas for a while, former director of the Arkansas Sports Hall of Fame in Little Rock inside War Memorial Stadium, which we had a chance to raid 3 years ago. But it'll be great to see him and nice to start conference play out there.
Women's basketball, as far as Little Rock is concerned, 5-5 on the year, and you can't necessarily always go off of the records for a Little Rock women's basketball team because they play some of the most gauntlet schedules you have ever seen.
Joe Foley's known for scheduling above his weight class, but most of the time they win the games.
Yeah, and so you've got wins against Vanderbilt in Nashville, a win against Memphis, win against Auburn, a lot like Georgia Southern had at the beginning of the season, then hit a little bit of a rough patch in the Oral Roberts tournament, lost both of those games against Abilene Christian and the host Oral Roberts out in Tulsa. Lost both of those, and then had to make their way to College Station, but just a 15-point loss to the number 15 team at the time in Texas A&M. Their only other loss came the last game that they played against Arkansas in Fayetteville, and lost that one pretty handily, but a really good Arkansas team that's knocking on the door of the top 25, may have actually cracked the top 25 this week, but a 73-39 loss. But that's the last game that they have played. It was December the 12th.
Wow.
And then the next time they will play, Little Rock will host Georgia State, or will face Georgia State up in Atlanta on Thursday before returning to host Georgia Southern on Saturday. But they had 3 games in that time span canceled. Supposed to play the following Thursday against Alabama at home. So you're going to be hosting an SEC opponent. That one gets canceled because of COVID concerns. And then the entirety of the Tulane Classic, where they were going to play Bradley to open it up on Monday the 20th, and then either Tulane or Texas Southern on that Tuesday. Both of those games get canceled, and all of the Tulane Classic gets canceled before you open Sunbelt play. So a very well-rested Little Rock women's basketball team.
And most of the time, this Little Rock team is the best women's team in the league. Now, Troy has caught up in recent years, and a lot of credit to what Shanda Rigby has done with the multiple appearances in the NCAA tournament. But more often than not, it's Little Rock as the top team in this league. If you want to liken it to Sunbelt women's sports, the hammerlock they have on women's basketball is like South Alabama does in women's soccer.
Yeah.
That Georgia Southern almost interrupted this year, but what South has won, was it 8 of the last 9 league championships in women's soccer?
Something like that.
We learned about that. But Little Rock is typically one of the best defensive teams in the country. Joe Foley stakes his claim on being strong defensively. They'll score just enough to beat you, and the teams that can speed them up, the rarity when it does happen, those are the teams that have success, and that's right up Georgia Southern's alley.
Yeah, Little Rock right now led in scoring by Sally Karorma, 20 points a game, shooting 22% from behind the arc, but 36% from the floor. Also 4 rebounds a game. The only other Little Rock Trojan in double figures, 10 points for Roziah Potter, coming in again just above 10 points a game. But it's a Little Rock team that has been hampered by injuries, illness the last couple of weeks, so you've got kind of a sporadic spot chart as far as Little Rock is concerned. But you're looking at that pretty much across the country now. A ton of games are starting to be impacted